Well, I don't know if you can hear me. We have technical problems, so what else is new? Every day it's something else. But we're going to try to do this, okay? We're going to try to do it. I don't know if you can hear me. We begin with late breaking news. There's reporting that Donald Trump humiliated by Ukraine's surprise attack on Russia's Air Force last weekend. Jonathan Lemire, writing for The Atlantic, that 4 people inside the White House telling him Trump enraged by what is now being called Putin's Pearl Harbor. Trump furious.
All good.
Zelensky left him out of the loop, did not ask for permission. Trump, as well as his closest advisors like Keith Kellogg, Trump's envoy to Ukraine, as well as Steve Bannon, now claiming Ukraine's attack has sabotaged the peace talks, because they were going so well. Lemire from Atlantic adding that Trump has not mentioned giving any more aid to Ukraine this year and now is likely not to, and noticeably absent from NATO's meeting of 50 defense ministers in Brussels on Wednesday, the alcoholic Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. This is the mop-up. I hope you can hear me. Well, I can think of one African Trump wants to include in his new travel ban. That would be Elon Musk. On today's show, Musk and Trump turn on one another, and we knew this would happen. It's gotten almost as ugly as they are. Musk calling for Trump to be impeached and replaced by J.D. Vance. Trump threatens to cancel all government contracts with Elon Musk. Musk responds by threatening to ground SpaceX's Dragon, which NASA uses to rescue astronauts from the International Space Station. Tesla shares on Thursday plunging down more than 14% as Elon Musk's fortune stripped of $150 billion in one single day. I've had that happen in a week, but not in a day. Steve Bannon, the heart and soullessness of MAGA, now calling for Elon Musk to be reported. Musk takes to Twitter and declares he's going nuclear, and declares the reason Attorney General Pam Bondi hasn't released the Epstein files is because Donald Trump is all over the Epstein files. Really? Well, we'll get back to that later on the show. Trump says he didn't need Musk to win last year. Musk accusing Trump of exhibiting the height of ingratitude after I spent $300 million to get this loser elected. Musk threatens to start a third party, telling Republicans without me, Democrats would be controlling the House and the Senate, and of course, the White House. Now, keep in mind, Trump always has fallings out with people. He has zero friends because everything in his life is transactional. Sometimes people close to him are welcomed back into the fold after a huge blowout. Roger Stone, for example, is on tape right after January 6th, calling Ivanka Trump the C word and threatening Jared with violence, physical violence. Yet, Roger Stone welcomed back into the fold. Steve Bannon was thrown to the curb in 2019, and he began to leak to his heart's content, said the worst things about Donald Trump. Steve Bannon welcomed back into the fold. Kellyanne Conway, a huge leaker, welcome back. So there are people who turn on Trump, people who are close to Trump, who don't show sufficient loyalty, but sometimes Trump will make peace with them. So what is going on right now between Musk and Trump? Might just be some, lovers' quarrel, Oedipal issues getting worked out. I think it's Oedipal. Trump is the racist, neo-Nazi father figure Elon Musk always wished he had 2 of instead of just 1. And Elon Musk is the son Donald Trump never had. And by that I mean successful. So it's a relationship fraught with complications. Today, it looks bad. I'll have more on this on a little while, but I should say nobody wishes for this to be the crack up we've all been waiting for. But, with Trump, it never really is it? It's fun to imagine these two self-destructing, losing everything, and confirming what I've always thought about what protects the American system from the mentally ill, and that is the mentally ill. The mentally ill are their own guardrails because eventually they destroy each other. I still believe that the people inside Trump's orbit are all really demented and will destroy each other. The problem is, at the same time, if we're not careful, they're going to destroy the entire planet, if they haven't already. One part of me thinking Musk will blow up the budget bill and the Republican Party will come crumbling down once again, proving they can't govern, and the American people will finally wake up. But in my heart of hearts, sadly, I know this battle royale between Elon Musk and Donald Trump only makes the Republicans stronger. It pains me to say, but the more they fight, the more they threaten, the stronger their resolve to defeat the Democrats ultimately becomes. Democrats, terrified of internal squabbling that is as public as what we've witnessed the past 10 years since Trump contaminated Washington, D.C., contaminated the Republican Party. I think it's what makes the Republicans stronger. In politics, lack of infighting makes you brittle. The Democrats are brittle. The Democratic Party is so terrified of divisiveness, it won't even do its job. And their job is to divide our country's narrative into separate camps, two separate camps, the haves and the have-nots. The Republicans do it. They demonize the poor, and the poor come running to them because they think they're not talking about me. What we need is a Democratic Party willing to divide, a party in Bernie and AOC's image demonizing the people who have it all. Because divisiveness is a good thing in politics. The Republicans waging class war against the 99%. And for the most part, Democrats, as usual, simply playing defense, protecting what they've won instead of demanding more. They're still talking about affordability instead of redistribution of the wealth. Take a look at this budget bill. It's a redistribution of the wealth. It's class warfare of the highest order. But Democrats are afraid of divisiveness. They're afraid to wage class warfare because there are too many Democrats in charge who have nothing to lose. So yeah, the Democrats should be fighting each other right now. The same way Musk and Trump are fighting. The way House Republicans always appear ungovernable because in the end, this fighting sharpens your party's switchblades for the real fight, which comes next year with the midterms. I'm David Feldman. This is the Mop-Up. I'm coming to you in New York City. Please like this episode, and most importantly, share it or leave a comment. Somebody corrected me on my last episode, and they were wrong. So you might want to read I like being corrected. I must confess, I like being corrected by an arrogant prick who's wrong. So, but please correct me. I do make mistakes. I do. More about Musk and Trump going at it later on in the show. Well, Democrats in deep red South Carolina scoring a massive landslide Tuesday in a special election, filling a seat that represents the 50th district in that state's House of Representatives. Again, we're talking about the State House of Representatives of South Carolina, not the United States Congress. But elections like these serve as leading indicators to show how Republican policy is being received by voters. Not well, not doing good. 24-year-old city council member from Sumter, South Carolina, won 71% of the vote, doubling the margin. The previous Democrat beat their Republican opponent 2 years ago in this heavily Democratic district, which Kamala Harris only won by 5 points. Joe Biden won it by 15 points in 2020. This guy won it by, well, he got 71% of the vote. I think he won it by 40%, more than 40% of the vote. Trump owns the Bedminster, New Jersey Golf Club, where his first wife and mother to his 3 oldest children is buried in an unmarked grave. I always show this. Take a look at this. This is where Ivanka's mother, this is where Don Jr. and Eric's mother is buried. Isn't that sweet? That's the grave. That's the unmarked grave on the back 9. That's Ivana Trump's grave. Don't bother. Just play through. We're mourning. We're just mourning. You guys play through. We're replacing some divots here. So sweet. Well, I'm not making that up. That's the Bedminster Country Club in New Jersey. Now, because Trump was found guilty on 34 counts of forging business records to cover up hush money payments to a porn star, his country club's liquor license was pulled, replaced with a temporary one because New Jersey forbids convicted felons like Donald Trump from serving alcohol. Now, health inspectors saying Trump's Bedminster Golf Club is the filthiest eating establishment in all of Somerset County, New Jersey, after slapping it with 18 violations, scoring a grade of 32 points out of a possible 100. So unfair. So unfair. No other restaurant in the county of Somerset, New Jersey, performed this sloppily last month. So unfair. It's so unfair. Inspectors say Trump's restaurant failed to protect diners from contaminated meat. It serves expired milk, and it's using a dishwasher with water that's been described at best lukewarm, not hot enough to kill dangerous germs. Inspectors also citing Trump for failing to provide soap next to sinks inside the kitchen at Bedminster Country Club in New Jersey, the filthiest restaurant in all of Somerset County, New Jersey. Immediately after the inspection, the restaurant inside Bedminster Country Club was ordered to post a C, a gentleman's C, in its window. Now it's been bumped up to a B. They put some soap in, and they're serving milk that hasn't expired, and they're making sure the meat is no longer contaminated. In their write-up, the inspector wrote that the restaurant's manager, quote, fails to demonstrate knowledge of food safety. So Trump will have no choice but to fire whoever that is so he can appoint him to head the FDA. As you know, the budget bill passed in the House. It's currently before the Senate. It slashes inspections of meat processing plants by 4% because, we should be able to trust big business. We should be able to trust the guy who owns the restaurant, Donald Trump at Bedminster Country Club, not to serve expired milk, not store raw meat so it gets contaminated. Yeah, uninspected meat. That's what they're cutting in the new budget. All part of Bobby Kennedy's program to get Americans running again. And I think you know where they'll be running. Axios reporting on average Donald Trump's social media activity has tripled over his social media activity during the first administration. According to this study from Axios, during his first 132 days of his second term, Trump posted 2,262 times. That's just today, going after Elon Musk. I think Musk posted 100 times on Twitter Thursday. Trump is averaging nearly 20 social media posts per day because, what else does he have to do? One of those posts insisting I was never rejected by Harvard because I never applied. This after Michael Wolff, author of several books on Donald Trump, claiming the president is singling out the elite university. He's defunding Harvard because Michael Wolff says Harvard rejected Donald Trump's application back in the 1960s. Well, although much of Donald Trump's orders are tied up in the courts, he is attempting to strip Harvard's endowment of its nearly $3 billion in federal grants, strip it of its tax-exempt status, and forbid it from accepting foreign students. Trump, again, taking to social media, insisting I never applied to Harvard, and then ordering White House spokesperson Taylor Rogers to tell reporters Trump wouldn't even dream of going to Harvard because it's, quote, overrated and corrupt. First Lady Melania Trump also slapping down rumors that Barron failed to gain acceptance into Harvard because, as we all know, only Donald can reject his children. Melania, anything you'd like to add?
He make my balls hurt. Have to go do number 2, number 3, number 2, and number 1. Oh dear. Lordy, lordy, lordy. I made a stinky. I'm going to need a mop and a fresh pair of undies. I knew I shouldn't have eaten that. Oh dear.
That is not artificial intelligence. That is not artificial intelligence. That is artificial stupidity. That's how I relax. That's what I do. Well, the richest man in the world spent $300 million to elect the dumbest man in the world president of the United States. And although his companies like SpaceX and Starlink have secured new contracts from the federal government since he came to Washington. And don't forget, Grok, his artificial intelligence system, has probably gained access to our government's vast database of U.S. citizens. Lord knows what he's going to do with that. Musk is heading back to the private sector with his reputation tainted by his association with Donald Trump, who contaminates everyone and everything he touches. That's why you might want to have some soap in the kitchen in the restaurant at Bedminster, Donald. With Tesla's European sales down 50% in April, there are many who believe the best way for Elon Musk to save his car company is by leaving it. Despite promising shareholders his adventure in politics is now over and he's dedicating all energy to rejuvenating his businesses, Elon Musk just can't seem to find the right balance of ketamine, Adderall, and ecstasy to keep his neo-Nazi white supremacist views to himself as he obliterates his brand, lashing out now at Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, Republicans, and the 1,000-page 2026 budget bill the Republican-controlled House passed right before Memorial Day, and the Republican-controlled Senate hopes to pass before Independence Day, July 4th. Musk now urging Senate Republicans to reject the bill, describing it as, quote, a disgusting abomination. A disgusting abomination. Why? Well, is it because the bill throws millions off Medicaid and food stamps? No! It's a disgusting abomination, according to Elon Musk, because it doesn't throw everyone off Medicaid and food stamps. The man who came to Washington in January promising DOJA would find $2 trillion a year in financial waste and fraud, but only found $65 billion to slash, resulting, on average, in 120 people per hour worldwide dying from starvation due to Elon Musk's cuts to foreign aid. Meanwhile, he's blaming Congress for not doing what he couldn't do either, and that is slash taxes for the richest 1% without driving up our national debt. When he came to Washington in January, he said, we can get that $5 trillion tax cut. I'll find the cuts. Didn't find them. Found about $65 billion in cuts, and something like 400,000 people worldwide dead from lack of foreign aid. The richest man in the world says anyone who votes for this bill, a bill that only cuts $1 trillion from Medicaid and food stamps, only tossing 4.5 million children into poverty by taking away their parents' child's tax credit while giving a $4 to $5 trillion tax cut to the richest 1%. Musk says anyone who votes for this bill should, quote, be ashamed of themselves. Yes, you should be ashamed of yourself because the cuts aren't deep enough. You're only tossing 4.5 million children into poverty. Shame on you. Warning, Musk, warning, this bill is the height of fiscal irresponsibility and would add $2.5 trillion to the national debt. That's assuming they cut $1 trillion from Medicaid and food stamps. So this isn't going over. If they don't cut Medicaid and food stamps, it's going to add about $4 trillion, $5 trillion to the national debt, which is why this bill also contains a provision where they have to lift the debt limit by $5 trillion. Hard to believe Elon Musk overpaid for Twitter. This isn't going well for Donald Trump or Elon Musk. During Thursday's Oval Office press conference, Trump said, I'm very disappointed in Elon. Trump then adding, I helped Elon a lot. Yeah, you helped Elon a lot. If by help you mean he's worth $150 billion, $250 billion less than when you returned to the Oval Office, he's lost about $250 billion since you returned to the Oval Office. Elon Musk, Tesla stock down 34% for the year. But Trump insisting that, I had a great relationship with Elon, but I'm no longer sure we're still friends. Diminishing the role Elon Musk played in buying the 2024 presidential election for Donald Trump, doing something dodgy or doji with the ballots. We haven't quite figured that out. Trump said, I don't need Musk. I would have won Pennsylvania without him. Elon Musk firing back on Twitter, without me, Trump would have lost the election. And then Elon Musk fired back, such ingratitude. Trump said he didn't understand why Musk is suddenly so opposed to the House budget bill, especially since Elon Musk, quote, knew the inner workings of that bill better than anybody sitting here. Musk, infuriated, firing back on Twitter, telling his 220 million followers, quote, false. This bill was never shown to me even once, and it was passed in the dead of night so fast that almost no one in Congress could even read it, unquote. Later in the day, Donald Trump flipped his lid. There he is without his lid. He went on Truth Social and told his 10 million followers, he said, if Elon wants me to save money in our budget, I should just wipe out Mr. Musk's government subsidies and contracts. He adds, I was always surprised Biden never got around to doing it. This is getting ugly. Musk flipped his lid. Here he is without his lid. Musk said on social media, well, if you defund SpaceX, I will begin decommissioning the Dragon spacecraft immediately, leaving your astronauts stranded in space. And you can't play in my fort. I built a fort, and you're not invited. Then Musk tweeted, and this was shocking. Musk tweeted, time to drop the really big bomb. Elon Musk, 3 p.m. Eastern, took to Twitter and wrote, Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. Duty bomb. And then he wrote, Donald eats his own boogers. Well, this is shocking news. I mean, Donald Trump should sue Elon Musk for slander, for lie. He's saying that the real reason Attorney General Pam Bondi hasn't released the Epstein files is because Donald Trump is all over them. Really? Donald Trump was friendly with Jeffrey Epstein? Trump knew Jeffrey? I mean, next you're going to tell me Melania knew Jeffrey Epstein and that this is really Donald Trump's hair and skin. Steve Bannon said of Elon Musk yesterday, quote, they should initiate a formal investigation of his immigration status because I am of the strong belief that he is an illegal alien and he should be deported from the country immediately. So let me tell you what's going on here. I've been married 6 times, and I've had neighbors when I was married, couples that would fighting. We lived next door to one couple. She would, I don't even want to describe what she would do to him, and the cops were there, and I'd go over and say, you know, guys, gal, you got to get it together. It's all about love and acceptance, and you got to, can't. They're still married. They're still married. 5 marriages? 5 failed marriages. The Republicans are that couple that's always fighting, and we think, oh, we better call the police. They're going to kill each other. No. Trust me, for the midterms, only noise we're going to be hearing is the lovemaking that's going on. Both Trump and Speaker Mike Johnson suggesting that Musk is upset with the budget bill because it removes electric vehicle subsidies. Jack Ewing, who covers the auto industry for the New York Times, writing yesterday that this new bill removes $7,500 in tax credits for Tesla buyers and would no longer subsidize factories who produce batteries or manufacture lithium. Electric vehicle charging stations no longer will be subsidized by the federal government if this Republican bill passes. Ewing over at the New York Times writes, Republicans want to prevent Musk from auctioning off clean air credits to car makers who produce gas-powered engines. Ewing over at the Times writing that those credits that Tesla has sold, it brought in the last quarter, it brought in close to $600 million, which is about $150 million more than what Tesla earned in profits last quarter. This bill will make it impossible for Tesla to sell clean air tax credits. Ewing writes that Musk took to Twitter and in his anger told Trump yesterday, quote, keep the electric vehicle solar incentive cuts in the bill, even though no oil and gas subsidies are touched. Then he writes, very unfair. Both of them. They're all about fairness. So unfair. Then he goes, but ditch the mountain of disgusting pork in this bill. He's a martyr. He's a martyr. So he spends $300 million to elect the guy who's going to screw him, who said during the campaign, I'm going to screw Tesla. I'm against electric vehicles. So the richest man in the world, whose fortune flows from manufacturing electric vehicles, very smart man, spent $300 million last year, invested $300 million to elect a candidate who not only calls climate change the world's biggest hoax, but also promised, if elected, I will wage war on electric vehicles. Very smart, Elon. I don't know what's going on with the ketamine and the Adderall and the ecstasy and the pot. Maybe your memory is slipping, but your entire fortune, Elon, stems entirely from President Obama's 2009 stimulus package, which poured billions into green energy in order to harness the profit motive. It was Obama who said we can defeat climate change by animating the animal spirits of greed. And that's how Elon Musk became the richest man in the world, from Obama's 2009 stimulus bill. When Tesla was about to go under, the federal government stepped in with loans, guaranteed loans. But, maybe it's the New York Times suggesting he's taking way too much Adderall and ecstasy and ketamine. But there's also bigotry eating away at Elon's synapses. And bigotry, unchecked, makes people dumber than they already are. Elon Musk is a white supremacist from apartheid-era South Africa. His taste for far-right neo-Nazi race science has contaminated his understanding of fact-based climate science. That's why he lost, $150 billion on Thursday. He no longer has sound business sense. He aligned himself with Trump, not just tarnishing his personal brand, but he supports a party beholden not to cars like Tesla, but rather a party that loves the internal combustion engine, a party that wants to prop up any industry that drinks oil with the ferocity of Pete Hegseth drinking whiskey at Pentagon happy hour. On Wednesday, Trump reversed Biden-era restrictions against drilling for oil in Alaska, promising to open up 13 million pristine acres to the fossil fuel industry. Not good for Tesla. Not good for Tesla. He's literally saying, drill, baby, drill. House Speaker Mike Johnson, after a 20-minute phone call with Musk, telling reporters now Musk's wrong about the one big, beautiful bill that is now stalling in the Senate. Majority Leader John Thune claiming he'll need Donald Trump's assistance in pushing this bill over the top. He wants Trump to get on the phone and tell Senate Republicans what he just told reluctant House Republicans. Beautiful wife, beautiful kids, be a terrible shame if something happened to them. And I'm not joking around. So, all it takes is 4 Republicans in the Senate to kill this bill. Rand Paul saying as many as 10 Republican senators wouldn't vote for the House version of the bill. Rand Paul calling the bill a love letter to the military-industrial complex and said he wouldn't vote for it, especially because of the provision inside of it that raises the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. Rand Paul, a doctor, son of a doctor, doesn't care about the Medicaid cuts. That he's fine with. It's the debt. So on one side of the Republican Senate, you have people like Wisconsin Republican Ron Johnson echoing Elon Musk by calling the bill immoral and grotesque. That's what Ron Johnson, the immoral and grotesque Ron Johnson, called this bill. And why is it immoral and grotesque, according to Ron Johnson? Because it isn't immoral and grotesque enough. Ron Johnson of Wisconsin wants more cuts to the social safety net because he says, this is what he said, it's immoral and grotesque to saddle our children and grandchildren with more debt. Well, you could get rid of the tax cuts for the rich, Ron. Johnson married into wealth and then went to work for his father-in-law's plastic company, then doubled his fortune, his own fortune, Ron Johnson's fortune, by going into politics. Seriously. According to the Congressional Integrity Project, Senator Ron Johnson, on March 2nd, 2020, after sitting in on a private briefing regarding COVID, in which he was told, this is top secret, but the virus is going to necessitate the entire economy shutting down for most of the year. After he heard this classified briefing, Ron Johnson did what any decent, good man would do. He got on the phone with his broker and sold everything. So, if Ron Johnson was really concerned about saddling future generations with more debt, he'd be calling for the 2017 Trump tax cuts for the rich to expire. But instead, he prefers saddling his own children and their children with inherited wealth. Wealth none of them deserve. Thanks to Donald Trump's tax cuts for the rich back in 2017, parents today can leave their children $13 million total without these idiot, lazy, and worthless kids having to pay any taxes on that $13 million. That's if one parent dies. Married couples together can leave $27 million tax-free to their worthless children. If you inherit $27 million from your parents, you're worthless. It's un-American. Certainly not what Republicans stand for, right? Work ethic. Right now, Republicans for the 2026 bill want to raise it to $30 million. They think, well, Biden inflation, right now we only get to leave $27 million to our wall-eyed children because we need more money because of inflation. So the new bill, they want to be able to give $30 million tax-free to their kids. They want mommy and daddy, when they die, to be able to leave $30 million tax-free dollars to their wall-eyed kids. In other words, if your mommy and daddy are worth $100 million when they die, $30 million of that will come to you and your brothers and sisters tax-free. The other $70 million, well, you're going to have to work for that to hide it from the government. You got to tie that up in tax shelters so you don't have to pay the government anything until you sell those investments or hide them in a retirement account. This is why Senate Republicans want to lift the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. Because all they can do right now is slash Medicaid and food stamps by $1 trillion over the next decade. If they're lucky, they can slash $1 trillion for Medicaid and food stamps. But that doesn't make a dent in the $4 to $5 trillion these tax cuts for Ron Johnson's children and the other richest 1%, it won't make a dent in what these tax cuts will end up costing. So most analysts, government analysts and think tanks, conservative or Republican, say Republicans would add $2.5 trillion to our national debt over the next decade if they do what's in the House bill, which is lower taxes for the rich by cutting food stamps and Medicaid by $1 trillion. Okay? If they do that, it only adds $2.5 trillion to the debt. Assuming nothing bad happens, like more COVID, more war, another Great Depression that Trump gave us in 2020, more jobs lost in 2020 than any time since the Great Depression. Okay, so we don't know if they're going to cut food stamps and Medicaid by $1 trillion. It's what Mike Johnson, the Speaker, is calling for. It's what the House passed. But if the Senate says no, we just can't cut what are called entitlements. Medicaid and food stamps are untouchable. Not anymore. This is historic. This is the first time they've ever proposed cutting Medicaid and food stamps at such a high number. This is non-discretionary spending that they want to spend, that they want to cut. If Republicans, if there are 4 Republicans, they're called the Medicaid moderates, if they block it, then, and the tax cuts for the rich go through, that will add $4 to $5 trillion over the next decade, which is why, to be on the safe side, the Senate, their version of the bill, lifts our debt ceiling by $5 trillion. The House bill only lifts it by like $4.5 trillion. Mike Johnson, Trump, Ron Johnson, Elon Musk are saying we need to eliminate waste and fraud. Mike Johnson insisting his bill, his budget, eliminates waste and fraud. No, it throws millions and millions of children into poverty. It tosses millions of Americans off food stamps and Medicaid. If you wanted to go after waste and fraud, you'd target all the children about to receive $30 million in tax-free inheritance from mommy and daddy. That's one way to eliminate waste and stop promoting supply-side economics. That's how you can eliminate fraud. Arthur Laffer is an effing fraud. Most of the people getting that $30 million tax-free inheritance from mommy and daddy, by the way, are grown children who still call them mommy and daddy. They are able-bodied adults, right? They're able-bodied adults. Now, in order to pay for their tax-free inheritance, other able-bodied adults who don't have rich mommies and daddies are being forced to work for Medicaid and food stamps. That's in the House bill. That's what most Senate Republicans want. Work requirements for able-bodied food stamp and Medicaid recipients. Republicans want work requirements, 80 hours of work per month in order for able-bodied adults with children over the age of 7 to qualify for food stamps and Medicaid. This is what Speaker Mike Johnson calls, and I'm not making this up, the moral component of his budget bill. He thinks it's immoral for people to get stuff without having to work for it. That's literally what Mike Johnson said about work requirements for food stamps and Medicaid, work requirements so that children of the richest 1% don't have to work in order to inherit 30 million tax-free dollars. That's what this is about. And somehow he finds morality and religion in this. Senate Majority Leader John Thune saying these work requirements are necessary to remind Americans that health care only comes with a job. He said in the well of the Senate this week, if Americans want good health care, then they need good jobs. In other words, get to work. Get to work. Or what? Nobody ever asks, or what? Or what? Well, somebody shouted to Joni Ernst, but people are going to die. And the senator from Ohio, Republican Joni Ernst, said, well, we're all going to die. Yeah. We could join the rest of the industrialized world by providing health care to people, whether they have a job or not. But according to Speaker Mike Johnson, that would be the height of immorality. Morality. He's talking morality. He's throwing millions, and he wants to throw millions and millions of people, kids, into poverty. The child tax credit, 4.5 million children. Their parents won't qualify for the child tax credit. They're going to be plunged into poverty. He's talking morality. It's the moral thing to do because these kids aren't working for their child tax credit. Throwing single moms off food stamps. Throwing single moms off Medicaid because they're working fewer than 80 hours a month. That's the moral thing to do. So mom, what? Goes and works more than 80 hours a week and ties her kid to a radiator because health care as well as child care is unaffordable? When you ask these devout Christians, these hypocrites, about the teachings of Jesus, they say, yes, I believe we have to help the least among us, but the government can't do it. They say the government is ill-equipped. They say we should rely on faith-based charities because faith-based charities can do it so much better and more efficiently. Well, the latest studies suggest the federal government loses roughly $100 billion a year in tax dollars by providing tax-exempt status to religious organizations. By the way, the Johnson Amendment, not the Mike Johnson Amendment, the Lyndon Johnson Amendment from the 1950s, says that religious organizations lose their tax-exempt status if they endorse a political candidate. Well, that never happens here in America. I've never seen any religious leaders endorsing Donald Trump. Have you? I mean, except for Liberty University, the 700 Club, Tony Perkins' Family Research Council, James Dobson's Focus on the Family, Franklin Graham of Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, Robert Jeffress of First Baptist Church, and of course, Paula White Cain of the New Destiny Christian Center, who is running Donald Trump's faith-based office. Except for them and probably 1,000 other like-minded imbeciles, I've never seen a nonprofit, tax-exempt church endorsing a presidential candidate. Thanks to George W. Bush, the federal government pours close to $20 billion a year into faith-based charities to do what the government should be doing because it does it better. The government is better at feeding and housing the homeless, migrants, and helping people after a natural disaster. Okay? That's a fact. But because of George W. Bush, we give $20 billion a year to faith-based charities. We're privatizing. We're giving it to faith-based charities, but we're privatizing helping Americans. World Vision is one such faith-based organization that gets money, that gets your money to help the world. Its president and CEO, Edgar Sandoval, earned $605,000 in salaries and benefits in 2022. You might remember after Hurricane Helene struck before the November election, Donald Trump showed up with Franklin Graham. And the two men lied, saying Joe Biden's FEMA was leaving people in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina to die. It was a lie, right? Franklin Graham made a big show of delivering the aid that FEMA wasn't able to deliver, which isn't true. FEMA took care of anyone who wasn't pointing a gun at them, because so many were led to believe by Trump that the government, FEMA, was coming to take your property. Remember that? FEMA workers couldn't help in deep red districts because they were pointing guns, because Trump said they're coming for your property. So Franklin Graham made a big show of handing out a bottle of water. In 2022, it's Samaritan's Purse. That's his charity. And all of it, Samaritan's Purse, it's a tax-exempt religious organization that gets several $1 million a year from the federal government to do humanitarian aid way more efficiently than the government can. Samaritan's Purse, a tax-exempt religious organization. No taxes. You donate, it's tax deductible. Plus, they get millions of dollars in business from the federal government to help out after a disaster. Franklin Graham in 2022 was paid $772,000 in salary by Samaritan's Purse, a tax-exempt religious organization that gets several $1 million a year from the federal government to give out a bottle of water after a hurricane, because they can do it so much better than the government can. Franklin Graham in 2022 was also being paid $514,000. So he made $772,000 in 2022 from Samaritan's Purse, and then he picked up $514,000 from the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, named after Franklin Graham's deceased and virulently anti-Semitic father, Billy Graham. Billy Graham, anti-Semite. Google it. Listen to the Nixon tapes. Billy Graham, anti-Semite. And then some. Don't get me started about why Jerry Falwell turned to abortion after he realized, well, I can't make money fighting for segregation. So, as of 2022, Franklin Graham from Samaritan's Purse was getting paid nearly $1.3 million a year because faith-based organizations, they don't have the waste or fraud that's rampant in government agencies like FEMA, which pays its head $185,000 a year. The head of FEMA is getting $185,000 a year. Wait, that's not a lot of money to run. How do people not know this? How do people just not? Anyway, so you got this little fight going on over the budget inside the Republican Party. On one side, you have the hardline religious zealots who oppose the bill because it doesn't kill enough people. And then you have what Politico calls the Medicaid moderates, the faux progressives like Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, who said he wouldn't vote for any budget bill that slashes Medicaid. He said, I'm not voting for it. He called it a sick tax. There are going to be some co-pays for Medicaid for some people, and Josh Hawley called it a sick tax. He says, I'm not voting for it. Well, until he got a phone call from Donald Trump. After talking to Donald Trump this week, Josh Hawley said, I support the bill because Donald Trump promised me there would be no cuts to Medicaid. Trump gave Hawley his word. And, you know, all we have is our word, right? They're not going to cut Medicaid. It's in the bill. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office just came out with several reports, one saying that the House bill would result in 11 million Americans losing their health insurance. But Trump says that's not in the bill. The Congressional Budget Office also saying the House bill, with its cuts to Medicaid and food stamps, would add $1.5 trillion to the debt because of the work required, so that for the tax cuts for the rich, so the rich don't have, so the children of the rich don't have to work. We're working for food stamps and Medicaid, so some rich prick doesn't have to. If they keep the tax cuts, but don't cut food stamps and Medicaid, they're estimating this bill will add $4 to $5 trillion to the debt. Now, what do you think the Republicans think is more important? Cutting waste, cutting $1 trillion in food stamps or in Medicaid, or giving the rich a $4 to $5 trillion tax cut? If they have to choose, what are they going to do? Well, they'll do what they always do. Rack up more debt, not cut Medicaid and food stamps, but give the rich their tax cut. So Trump and Mike Johnson, liars. The only way you can do this is by lying. They lie and say Medicaid isn't being cut. It is. It's being cut. And then they attack the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. Trump says the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, doesn't understand economics. Yes, the CBO doesn't understand economics the same way the man who went bankrupt at least 6 times does. He lied, Trump lies, and said historically, tax cuts juice the economy and end up paying for themselves. That's fraud. That is fraud. That is a lie. We tried it with Reagan. We tried it with George W. Bush. We tried it in 2017. They don't. Tax cuts do not pay for themselves. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, second in command to Mike Johnson, warning You can't trust the Congressional Budget Office. He literally said this. This is what Steve Scalise said. This is the Congressional Budget Office. They're never right. He added, hey, these were the same guys who kept warning us about the 2017 tax cuts. You going to believe them? Yeah. You mean the tax cuts from 2017 that added $8 trillion to our national debt? So that by the time Donald Trump left office the first time, he was responsible for nearly 1/3 of our country's national debt? Those tax cuts that the CBO warned us about? Yeah, they sure got it wrong. They sure got it wrong. Caroline Leavitt, Trump's White House press prevaricator, calling the Congressional Budget Office historically wrong. She accused it of being partisan and political. She complained that everyone who works for the Congressional Budget Office donates money to Democratic candidates. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent compared the CBO's ability to score budget bills to Enron's fraudulent bookkeeping. But the Washington Post has a fact checker. And the Washington Post fact checker gave the White House and Scott Bessent 4 Pinocchios. 4 Pinocchios means they are lying when they accuse the Congressional Budget Office of being a Trojan horse for Democrats. The Washington Post said a very small number of low-level Congressional Budget Office workers donated a little to the Democratic Party going all the way back to 1999, while the current head of the CBO, Philip Swagel, worked in George W. Bush's White House. That would be a Republican. He donates money to Republican candidates and was appointed to the CBO, to head the CBO in 2019 by Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican, and Democratic Congresswoman and Speaker at the time, Nancy Pelosi. Doesn't matter. Caroline Leavitt is what? What is she, like? I think she's like 28. Your parents must be so proud of you. Like when she was 8, they'd say, she's only 8, but she's lying like a 14-year-old. She's already lying. I mean, she's a prodigy. Her father used to travel around Europe and take her to various courts, kingdoms, and she would lie. Like Mozart used to play for the kings and the princes of the Austria-Hungary Empire. Caroline Leavitt, at the age of 15, traveled throughout Europe and would lie before Europe's top kings and princes. God, it's hot in here. Is anybody still here? Okay. So this is the MO for the Republican Party. They create their own reality. They lie, and anytime their lie gets fact-checked, the person fact-checking them is immediately called a Democrat or a liar. And then there's always withholding embarrassing information. That's their other MO. Just keep things secret and classified. Don't let the public find out. Politico saying the White House withheld and then redacted a new report from the USDA's quarterly outlook for United States agricultural trade. This was a report showing American farmers will be negatively impacted by Trump's tariffs. Well, of course they will. That's why before the 2020 presidential election, he had to give, when he imposed the tariffs on China back then, he had to give the farmers billions of dollars to buy their votes back then. He's going to have to do it again with these tariffs. But Politico earlier this week detailed the lengths White House officials have gone this year in order to delay this report and redact any sentences that provide evidence of America's growing trade deficit under Donald Trump. The trade deficit, with all these tariffs, getting worse. He finally spoke to Xi. It was like infrastructure week. Every week, he's going to talk to Xi. He's going to talk to Xi. He finally talked to Xi. Didn't go well. Didn't go well. Meanwhile, Marjorie Taylor Greene saying she voted for the budget bill without reading it. She says she would vote for it again without reading it, but lashed out at the bill, saying she wouldn't have voted for that bill had she known Mike Johnson snuck in a provision forbidding states over the next decade from regulating artificial intelligence. Greene said this provision violates states' rights. She added, AI is too dangerous for only the federal government to rein it in. Well, at least Marjorie Taylor Greene knows that AI stands for artificial intelligence. That's pretty good. You might recall, we have a lot of European people in Australia, New Zealand, China. We have people all over the world watching. You may not know this, but our current head of the Department of Education is Linda McMahon of World Wrestling Entertainment. That Linda McMahon, she referred to AI recently as A1. I wish I were making this up. Linda McMahon from World Wrestling Entertainment, our Secretary of Education, was talking to teachers. I don't think she's ever taught. She was speaking to educators at a conference in San Diego back in April of this year. And America's education secretary kept calling for public schools to utilize A1 teaching. Most of you know this. She said every school should have access to A1. McMahon was up on Capitol Hill this week pushing the House budget bill, which she said eliminates wasteful spending on underprivileged children. McMahon complained that under Joe Biden, spending on educating underprivileged children increased by 10 times. It went from this is what she said, it went from $1.5 billion a year during Trump's last year in office to $1.5 trillion a year by the time Joe Biden left office. She said it increased 10 times from $1.5 billion to $1.5 trillion in 4 years. She said that's how much spending increased. Education Secretary. Democratic Senator Jack Reed asked our Education Secretary to repeat those numbers, inquiring if she had got the math right. Our Education Secretary said yes. When Trump left office, the government was spending $1.5 billion a year. It increased by 10 times to $1.5 trillion by the time Joe Biden left office. And Senator Jack Reed, Democrat, politely asked the Education Secretary, maybe we should do a little math here. Let's find out if 10 times 1.5 billion is 1.5 trillion. And our Education Secretary said it most certainly is. And then Senator Jack Reed said, well, according to my math skills, 10 times 1.5 billion is 15.5 billion. not 1.5 trillion. To which our education secretary, she looked around. People were going, yeah. And she just went, okay. Only the best. That would be our Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, from World Wrestling Entertainment. Then the subject turned to the Trump administration's cracking down on diversity, equity, and inclusion inside public schools and, of course, elite colleges. Linda McMahon dutifully spouted the Trump administration's talking point of how it is our policy to eliminate ideological litmus tests in the hiring of professors and teachers. She said we have to get rid of ideological litmus tests, and she called for viewpoint diversity so students can learn a full spectrum of ideas, like 10 times $1.5 billion is $15.5 billion or $1.5 trillion. They should get the entire spectrum. So House Democrat Mark Takano of California asked our Secretary of Education if she considered it an ideological litmus test if, say, a school like, Harvard, refused to hire a professor who teaches that the Holocaust never happened. And our education secretary, and I'm not making this up, said, quote, there should be diversity of viewpoints relative to teachings and opinions on campuses. Unless, of course, you're pro-Palestinian. But she's okay with teaching students that the Holocaust never happened. Then the Squad's Summer Lee, House Democrat from Pennsylvania, she asked Secretary McMahon whether teaching children the story of Ruby Bridges should be banned because it promotes diversity, equity, and inclusion. And our education secretary confessed, I'm not quite familiar with Ruby Bridges' work. Well, Ruby Bridges' books have been banned from public schools in places like Florida and Texas because parents complain her books make white students feel uncomfortable. So they banned the books. Ruby Bridges became world famous for her bravery at the age of 6, when in 1960, she became the first black child to desegregate a whites-only Louisiana public school. Yes, we wouldn't want our white children to be made to feel uncomfortable learning American history. Unless, of course, someone wants to tear down a statue of Robert E. Lee, in which case we must not erase our history. Robert E. Lee is part of our history. So is the Confederate flag. It's not racism. It's part of our history. We should learn our history. Like, we should rename bases, military bases, after Confederate generals. It's part of our history. Can't teach Ruby Bridges, but Fort Bragg got its name back. 5 years ago, Congress passed a bill ordering the Pentagon to rename Fort Bragg and other military bases named after loser generals from the Confederacy. Fort Bragg, named after Braxton Bragg, a slave-holding genocidal maniac who led the Confederate Army to defeat during the Civil War. Bad general. Lost the war. morally reprehensible. So it was changed to Fort Liberty. But the very first thing Pete Hegseth did this year as our Secretary of Defense was change Fort Liberty's name back to Fort Bragg because it's part of our history. But pictures of veterans like Jackie Robinson hanging on the walls of the Pentagon, the Tuskegee Airmen, pictures of them hanging on the walls of the Pentagon, books about Jackie Robinson, books about the Tuskegee Airmen in military libraries, thrown out. It's DEI. Harvey Milk served in the Korean War, and then he went on to become America's leading voice for LGBTQ rights in San Francisco in the 70s, and then he was eventually assassinated while serving on San Francisco's City Board of Supervisors. To honor his work, to honor his contribution, the Biden administration in 2021 christened a U.S. naval ship the Harvey Milk. And this week, in honor of Pride Month, Pete Hegseth unchristened it and officially announced transgender soldiers have to get out. It's official policy for Pride Month. If you're a transgender soldier, get out of the military. And he unchristened a ship named after Harvey Milk. Couldn't, like the first day of June, the first day of Pride Month, couldn't have waited till July. Had to do it during Pride Month. To Hegseth's credit, the ship has not been renamed after Dan White, the San Francisco supervisor who assassinated Harvey Milk. I'm sure he was tempted to name the ship after Dan White. But Dan White served in the Army, not the Navy, so it would have been inappropriate. The great Dan Rather has a Substack, which all of you should subscribe to. Great writer. You want to learn how to write? Read the Associated Press and read Dan Rather. Read Theodore Dreiser. Read it's so hot in here. I'm blanking on Babbitt. Sinclair Lewis. Jesus. Read Sinclair Lewis. They have backgrounds in journalism. People who become novelists, Tom Wolfe was it New Journalism. They become great novelists because they know how to write clearly. Read Dan Rather. Anyway, he's reporting on his Substack that Pete, anybody still here? It's so effing hot. I should wrap it up. Dan Rather reporting on his Substack that Pete Hegseth has other famous civil rights activists on his kill list. I mean, this is incredible. I mean, the fact that they waited until June to rechristen the USS Harvey Milk. So Dan Rather got the list from his old employer, CBS News. According to CBS News, Hegseth is planning to rechristen Navy ships named after the following people. I wish this was like a joke. The first black Supreme Court Justice, Thurgood Marshall. He's going to change the name of a ship named after Thurgood Marshall. Well, yeah, why would you want to name a ship after Thurgood Marshall? Renaming a ship named after Ruth Bader Ginsburg, America's first decent female Supreme Court Justice. Sandra Day O'Connor was the first female on the court, but she was a Reagan nominee. Indecent. Other civil rights leaders whose names Hegseth is planning to strip off Navy ships include Harriet Tubman, Dolores Huerta, one of the leaders of the United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez, another leader of the United Farm Workers, Medgar Evers, the civil rights leader, shot to death outside his Mississippi home in 1963, and Lucy Stone. And I had to look up Lucy Stone. No idea who Lucy Stone was. Turns out Lucy Stone still has a ship named after her, but Pete Hegseth is going to take that away from her. Lucy Stone was one of the first women in America to earn a college degree, and then she went on to become one of America's leading abolitionists and suffragettes. I had no idea who she was. And that makes me uncomfortable. I don't like feeling stupid. Lucy Stone makes me feel stupid, and having a ship named after Lucy Stone doesn't make me want to go look up who Lucy Stone is. It just makes me feel stupid. So I don't want Lucy Stone's name on a battleship, and I don't want Lucy Stone taught in our public schools, because I don't think my children should be made to feel stupid. And I don't think I should be made to feel stupid if my kids come home telling me about Lucy Stone and I don't know who she is. Sorry, I'm doing some work for Moms for Liberty. Well, that's the new Pentagon under the alcoholic, white Christian nationalist Pete Hegseth, whose body is covered in neo-Nazi tattoos, and his own mother put into writing that he's abusive towards women. Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, who is alleged to have once led co-workers at a nonprofit that he ran and destroyed. He is alleged to have led them in a drunken chant of "Kill all Muslims, kill all Muslims." He denies it. But what do you think? What do you think? Pete Hegseth, what do you think?
My butt hurts.
Interesting. I believe it, especially since he's just named 26-year-old Kingsley Wilson to be the Pentagon's new press secretary. The New Republic reporting Kingsley Wilson is a white nationalist who has left behind a social media trail promoting the Great Replacement theory while singing the praises of Vladimir Putin and calling Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky an entitled midget. She's also promoted anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that have triggered condemnation from the Anti-Defamation League. That's our new Pentagon spokesperson, 26-year-old Kingsley Wilson. Good work there, Donald Trump, right? Subscriptions since he took over the Kennedy Center are down 40%. Next week, he and the vice president are going to attend Les Miserables. This is Les Miserables at the Kennedy Center under the direction of Donald Trump. Well, before I go, I plan to become a Republican. I just need to get rich. You know, I should be a Republican because I got stupid kids. That's not true, but I'd like to leave 30 million tax-free dollars to my kids are brilliant. All of them. But I got a money maker here. You know, I think of myself as a teacher, and you're going to love this. And get out your wallets and your checkbooks, because David Feldman's dynamic learning system This is education. In our opportunity economy, it's all about education and affordability. That's what I stand for. And with David Feldman's dynamic learning system, you can learn anything. It's all about teaching. And so I have a program for schools and professionals who want to better themselves with David Feldman's dynamic learning systems, history, science, even math. Learning is fun. But don't take my word for it. Here is Woodrow Wilson, the 28th president of the United States, renowned segregationists. One of the top segregationists in American history. Here is Woodrow Wilson, the 28th president of the United States, to tell you why David Feldman's dynamic learning system is right for your child, whether they be in middle school or plagiarizing their senior thesis at Princeton.
Discovering knowledge is fun when it's David Feldman's dynamic learning system. Hi, my name is Woodrow Wilson. I'm a segregationist. Birth of a Nation is my favorite movie. Why won't you support my League of Nations? Let's have an income tax. Let's send our boys over to Europe so they can fight in World War I. See how easy it is to learn history. I'm having a stroke. Put my wife in charge. I made a poopy in my pants. I was the governor of New Jersey. Before that, I was president of Princeton. I have a PhD. Learning history doesn't have to be a chore now with David Feldman's dynamic learning system. I made a stinky in my pants.
I'm going to be rich. This is me harnessing AI and bringing segregationists like Woodrow Wilson back to life to teach our children. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. By the way, that thing that I did, this is why I've never made it. Doing things like this, it's why I've never made it. White Woodrow, okay. Thank you for listening to me. Please share this episode, especially the David Feldman Dynamic Learning System commercial. If you liked any of this, hit the like button, leave a comment, correct me. I love being corrected. I love being corrected and then the person correcting me is wrong, but if I'm wrong, I'll acknowledge it. Buy me an air conditioner. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. I think that covers everything. All right. Thank you.